Welcome back to part two of my tutorial for the K1 visa application um, process where you have to fill out the I-129F form plus provide additional evidence outside of that form before sending the application out to be processed. So take the time to look at part one to understand the form and what's required there. And if you find that information helpful and this information helpful in my series for the K1 visa, where you save both time and money and you want to show your appreciation, there's a link somewhere on this page to my nonprofit organization, which is Financial Education Development Inc. The website is fed-inc.org. You can go there and donate uh, money because we're trying to raise money to get a building where we can offer more services to people so they can save both time and money, with our end goal being that each person that's part of a program can have their own place, their own career, and be financially stable. Now, my nonprofit primarily focuses on investments and things like that, real estate and the stock market. But as we grow, I'll be able to bring aboard more people, experts who can provide for free other services and knowledge that you guys can take and apply to your daily life to be financially successful in life, not just for yourself and your family, but for the next generation and the next generation, etc., etc. So, with no further ado, let's jump right in to this application process. And we will start here with my overview. And I will go over this in no particular order, but because they're all equally important and all this documentation has to go with your K1 visa application, which is the I-129F form. All right. So let's start with the two letters from each side of the family. All right. So the letters from each side of the family. In my case, my mother and my friend wrote a letter stating that they are aware of our marriage, our my me and my fiance's relationship, and that's what those letters are for. And my fiance, you got letters from her aunt and uncle. All right, a minimum of two each. That's all you need. You don't need a whole lot, but you can get more if you like. And each letter has to be notarized. And there's a little bit of a method to the madness. Now, according to the lawyer that I hired, each letter has to be unique in its own way, but it's within a structure. So all the letters will start like this is my fiance's uncle's letter, and all of them will be the same way with these things in mind. It'll say, "My name is," and the full name. And obviously, I changed this around a little bit. Uh, and I am the uncle of Janet Smith, which is a name change again for my fiance. My birth, my date of birth is June 13th, 1970, 57. I was born in Antananarivo, Madagascar. This has to be the same for everybody. So if it's your mother writing a letter, it will say, "My name is blah, blah, blah. I am the mother of whoever you are. My date of birth is whatever your mother's date of birth is. And I was born in whatever city, state, and country." In this case, here it says Antananarivo, Madagascar, which is the capital of Madagascar. It could be anything, any country. Seth Albert Lover, which is me, the name representing me. It has to be your full legal name. All right, your first, middle, and last name. Is engaged to my niece. So this stuff is a must. All right, and obviously is engaged to my niece. And here's where it has to become personalized. There's, "I am happy that my niece is going to America to marry Seth." But this here must be stated as well. it has to state that she's going coming to America to marry me. She says it's coming to America. She's coming to America to marry Seth or me. All right. From here to here is a personal touch from the uncle. Says he, referring to me, is a humble man who shows us respect whenever he visits. And then he put his contact information. My phone number is blah, 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 blah for your use. All right. So the personal touch is just this. And in every letter it will be different. But everything else has to be the same. All right. And it says, I declare under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct. Sincerely, he signed his name there and date it. Of course, they'll stamp this whole thing here in front of a notary. Okay. And this letter is the same for the aunt, for my fiance's aunt. And of course, this information right there. So let's go on to the next letter. Uh, discard that. Now here is a letter from me. All right, I have my name. I use a block style. As you can see, it's slightly different. I, Seth Lever, a U.S. citizen, born on July 3rd, 1990 in Baltimore, Maryland, USA, intend to marry my fiancée, whose legal name, I forgot to put like a middle name in here as the example, but Janet Doe Smith, born on November 8th, 1999, within 90 days of her arriving in the United States on a K-1 visa. It has to be like that on a K-1 visa, identical like that, just change the information for your personal information and address. I declare under perjury on all this stuff, all this has to be the same. All this has to be same. And you sign this in front of a notary. But it's not just a stamp and the notary signing a thing. This statement right here is important. You put the statement in here, you could pause the video to get it, put the date, the 11th day of whenever, change this out to your name, and you could write all this stuff down and have it ready. And you sign this in front of the notary put a stamp or whatever, his or her stamp there, and write her name and information right here and all this, and signature down here, notary information there, and everything is done right there. And the notary will know what to put right there. So that's there is how this is done for you stating that. That's your letter stating, your fiance letter will be identical to this and that this information, nothing is different. Maybe in her country you may not have all this part, right? It's not necessary because they'll stamp and approve it on that side, but that is not really necessary. But here in the United States, if you here, add this. All right. So that one is there. Let's close this out. This card, move over here. Let's talk about this one. This is my mom's letter. Obviously, I changed information and whatnot. Your address, her address right there, information. Um, my name is blah blah blah. I forgot to put her middle name in here. Whatever your full name, a legal name. I am Seth. I don't know, but Doe Lover's mother, full name, a legal name. I was born on April 1, 1955, in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago, West Indies. All right, and this is a personal touch with her information. And you see the format is in a block format, so it's slightly different. My eyes and ears have been glued to my son's relationship with Janet Smith. You know, here her name could remain informal, but you can make it formal as well if you want and add her middle name. And the personal touch, all this is personal touch. I call her princess, and I can't wait for her to join us here so my son can marry her. This is very important. Can't wait for my son to join us here. Why? So my son can marry her. It's important that she states that. All right, at minimum, you can put within 90 days of her arriving here if you like. And of course, this is very important here. I declare under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct. Sincerely, and you sign her name in front of a notary, and all this stuff is done by the notary again, and it's submitted with a seal and all that stuff. Very, very important that this letter is like that. And of course, every person will add their personal touch. In the case of my friend, she basically said the same thing. My name is blah, blah, blah. I am the friend of Seth Doe Lover, her birth date. And she basically says, I've only spoke to his fiance once, but I'm happy that she's coming to America. So Seth and her can be married within 90 days, something like that. So it's about the same thing. Information is there. So let me discard that. It's no longer important. And we get into some of these uh, pictures and whatnot in a few. But let's jump right over to this one. This is how we met type situation. Whatever the situation is, I just put, you have to start obviously. I missed information. So you have your name, address, there, whatever, USCIS, and you write a letter. You and your fiance have to write a letter stating how you all met. And some of those things need to match. For instance, you have your name, when you were born, where you were born. In your case, if you're filing for your fiance, so you state you are a citizen of the United States, so you're a U.S. citizen. I am engaged to my fiance right there. And here you just put a date when we met. I just use the like a website for that, or if you met at the airport, you write the date and time, not the time, but the date that you met, and so forth. This is just a generic one, so I just put that in there for the for this video. All right, after all this, yeah, you kind of familiarize. So if you met at the airport, you met via a friend. After talking, you'll exchange phone numbers, whatever, and started communicating. Right? After a few months of communication, I realized that we shared values. And, we're both Christians and whatnot. And you talk about what you know, a little bit about what you know about the family, but how you all have values and why, etc. You don't have to go into arguments or you talking about checking her out and all that stuff. Just keep it generic, something like this, or whatever, what you all had in common briefly. All right, how long you all communicated and so forth when you visited, um, and your intent was to get to know each other better. Don't go into too much details. Keep it as like this. But it has to be personable in the sense that this information is right here, as far as um, how it goes. And you can pause and read this letter to see how it is. All right, and you show here her character, how she protected me, and all that stuff, you know, and things like that. And then of course, in this case here, I put because I did revisit my fiance during the course of this whole thing, but it's not necessary. And here we went about and we talk about a few other things, and of course, at the end, this is where things must be the same on both the application, both your letters, how you met. All right. So it's an affidavit. So it says, I, Seth, and you put whatever name in there, your middle name, Lover, a U.S. citizen, born, whatever, wherever you're born. Here, even if I put this in here, if you're born in another country or you're a naturalized citizen, you still put where you were born. I intend to marry my fiancee, Janet Samantha Smith, born or whatever, wherever she was born, within 90 days of her arriving in the United States on a K-1 visa. And all this is mandatory, must appear at the end of your letter and her letter as well, your fiance's letter. And it says, I declare on the penalty of perjury, the foregoing is true and correct. Of course, again, you want to have this, you don't just want to have a stamp and a notary. You want to put that statement there and sign this and date it in front of your notary. And you fill in all that information. She'll fill that out, or he, whoever the notary is, will put his stamp. You sign, and that information is done. Now, on top of all this, let's see, that's the letter. That's the letter from you and your fiance. There's some other things. There's a letter, of course, letter of intent to marry. I showed you that. One of mine. Um, her letter and your letter has to be identical, except the names change. Now, before I go into the pictures, I want to discuss uh, some additional details because I think it's important um, in this. Now, my fiance's friends and family don't really read and write English very well. My fiance doesn't really have a mastery of English as well. To write it. She'll write it and she'll be all right, proficient in it, but maybe not at a level where immigration might understand what she's saying. So what you would want to do in this case is write all the letters down based on the format that was presented. And of course, if this stuff is still confusing, ask me and I'll go into more details, or I'll do it a different way. But I wrote all the letters in English because if I had my fiance and her family members write that stuff, it would be in their language, which is Malagasy. Then that letter got to be notarized. Their affidavit's got to be notarized. Then it has to be presented to a certified translator who has to translate it and certify that it was translated into English properly. And that takes time and money, additional money. And if you're looking to marry someone from a foreign country that's third world or something, there's always a lot of bribery going on. She had to pay bribes because everybody thinks she's rich, and it can add up. So I basically wrote all the letters myself, and I added personal touches in there, like I read from her uncle's letter where I say, uh, Seth was humble and always show us respect when he visit. The aunt, I would say, well, I put something along the lines, well, he was always sick when he came, but when he came to the country to visit us, he felt better. Um, things like that. So, personal information on how they perceive me. And in case of my mom's letter, like obviously she can read and write English, but to save time, I wrote her letter as well, and I basically took information that I knew she had with with my fiance, like she would call my fiance princess. So I put that in there as a personal touch with that. But the the general structure of every letter is exactly the same except for the personal touches in there. And that is something that you really need to pay attention to. But I'm not against you writing all the letters and just having them printed and take it together, notarized, and emailing it back to you, or scanning it, or taking a picture, preferably emails. emails, a scanned copy is a lot better um, than a photograph of it. All right, with every letter that came, every one of these letters from the friend and family, it must be accompanied with a copy of their ID cards. It is very, very important. Must be accompanied by ID card. Copy of the ID card. All right. Must have a copy of the ID card. All right. And this can be a photograph. Um, my fiance's aunt and uncle took a picture of the ID card and sent it to me over WhatsApp, and I printed it and to attach it to the notarized letters that they sent, affidavits they sent, and gave it to my lawyer. All right. So that goes to my friend family and her family. So that's important, that documentation. Um, of course, I had to send a copy of my naturalization. And of course, this video is going too long, so I won't be able to go into this. So we'll go the legal documents. Copy of my passport, copy of my fiance's passport, copy of my naturalization, um, copies of my passport stamp of me visiting Madagascar both times, copies of my booking tickets for the airlines that I traveled to Madagascar both times. All that is documentation that needs to be sent along with your I-129F application. If you'll have any questions, ask it in the comments, shoot me an email. And again, if you find this information helpful, please go ahead and donate to my nonprofit. The information is in the somewhere on the page. You all have a good day.